Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and it's that time again, the monthly tier list update, where we take all of the characters from the last update, including the mid-month Ebony Mod Tier 3, and we attempt to rank them. Now, for those of you hoping or wondering or waiting to see if there's going to be a uniform video because there is another all-uniform sale, there won't be. But on the flip side, on the plus side, you can use this video as essentially my recommendation for or against uniforms that I'm going to be talking about. Obviously, we're not going to have time to go through all 141 characters in the game, sheesh, but we will be going through all of the characters that have been basically re-released because of their uniforms. I'm talking Supergiant, Proxima, Cull, Obsidian, aka Black Dwarf, Corvus, Ebony, and then also quite a few other characters who, in my opinion, have shifted their value up or down. So the ones that are bolded here are the ones I'm going to be talking about, in addition to all of the new ones, which have actually been removed from the tier list for now because I'm hiding their new placement. So we've got Mr. Fantastic Maker, Venom, Doctor Strange, Odin, Silver Surfer, Ghost Rider, Vision, Thor, and Scarlet Witch. So we're going to talk about where those characters move after we place the new characters in, because that's the most important thing. But first, standard disclaimer for all tier list videos, the general PSA. This is just my opinion. This is not necessarily how you have to play the game. You're more than welcome to play the game however you want and see characters however you want and see their value differently than I do. I'm just doing this as a helpful guide for those of you that want to know what I think of characters' value overall, and, you know, considering them. I don't say this in every video, but just to highlight, we're considering the characters at their very maximum level, so it's obviously going to give a huge advantage to tier 3 characters and transcended characters, considering them with CTPs, sort of max end game level builds. The only thing that I'm really not considering with any of these rankings is reforged CTPs, because I have zero first-hand support with them. I've seen a lot of second-hand anecdotal evidence, but I don't have any support myself except for Sentry and PvP with a Mighty Regen, but it's not really that much because it's just an extra all attack, all defense, so I can't really vouch for its, you know, it doesn't really make Sentry better because he's already the best in PvP, so if you're number 1, you can't go any higher. So yeah, with that being said, let's dive into the rankings for the new characters. So all of you guys want to know, where does Supergiant go? Supergiant is an outstanding character. She's just top to bottom, super insane. She's got healing, she's got, you know, crazy AoE, huge burst damage, and then she's very functional to play because her third skill, which is where she stacks all of her damage, is going to give her iframe ignore. So it's really easy to just pop off a bunch of skills and then press 3, and she just dives in front of the boss, and she's doing iframe ignore, so she's hitting them through any of their iframes, through any of their, you know, shenanigans or their BS where they're trying to hide or they're trying to jump or dodge you or whatever, miss you. They're not going to miss you. You're not going to miss them. She's really good. Her burst damage is insane. Her sustain is good when she doesn't have her transcendent skill up. You know, some characters, when they pop their transcendent skill, it's really good, and then when they pop their regular rotation, you're like, yikes. But Supergiant is not like that. Her regular burst rotation, which is 5 cancel 4 cancel 3, is really good. She is proc friendly, although she's going to excel way more with a judgment primarily, or a rage if you don't have a judgment. She's just overall a fantastic character for PvE with, surprisingly, some underrated PvP value thanks to the 33% damage reduction and a couple of other tricks up her sleeve. Like I said, healing, iframe ignore, those two are really biggies. So with all that being said, Supergiant is actually, in my opinion, the second best universal character in the game. I know. So she actually goes right under Null. That's gonna ruffle some feathers for sure. I can't wait for you guys to come at me in the comments, but she's really that good. She's best in slot for multiple days of ABX, which is a huge indicator of a character's raw power, but it's not an indicator of their survivability. So then you check out how she does against Mephisto, how she does against Null, and she's pushing the upper limits for players who have no Pierce, for players who have some Pierce, for players who have tons of Pierce. She's just crushing endgame content. As a universal, she can be used in Dispatch with great effect because of all of her AoE damage. So she just works pretty much in every piece of content. If there was a Vibranium level universal villain squad battle, I'm sure Supergiant would be up there for you know, points. She can one-shot DRX, which is another huge indicator of having big burst damage like Moonstone and Human Torch. Obviously one-shots GBR. Like, what can't she do at this point, right? That's what you're really asking yourself. You're asking yourself, what can't Supergiant do? So in my opinion, she's really right there with Null. She's side by side with the king of universal villains. So yeah, moving along to Corvus. Now, I'm a little bit lukewarm on Corvus, I have to admit. He seems like a one-trick pony to me, and I think he's a little bit overvalued in the meta right now because of his ability to completely eclipse Bullseye, Gwenom, etc. as the best speed villain. And to be honest, when you look at past ranking videos, I haven't really done much. I haven't been able to do much with the speed class. Like the combat class, the speed class has kind of been neglected because we've just had an influx of insane universal and blast types. So I think his value is going to be a little bit overrated. I'm going to say that personally. However, he's still really good. He's amazing for ABX, like I said. He's amazing for what he can do in squad battle. He's great for World Boss Ultimate and World Boss Legend. He's obviously amazing against Mephisto because of the type advantage. Basically, the only thing that he hasn't really found a home for is PvP, which is surprising because he has the revive, but he didn't get iframe ignore. His heal is not that good because it's contingent on landing his third skill, which is kind of hit and miss, especially in PvP because they might be an iframe. He doesn't have any iframe ignore. He doesn't really have much damage reduction. So yeah, he doesn't really build a place for himself in PvP like he used to, but he makes up for that for just being a big PvE powerhouse. However, unlike some of the other Black Order, I will say that Corvus doesn't really have a good, well, his 5 and 4 deal a lot of damage, but his 1, 2, and 3 don't, in my opinion. And then of course the 6 slams. That thing hits. That thing whacks. I didn't need to say 3 different words, but I did. Anyways, with that being said, I think Corvus is the third best. So I'm going to put him here, 1C basically, the first category, rank C out of Rogue, Luna Snow, and then Corvus himself. So yeah, that's where I think he deserves to go. Again, some people will disagree with me. Some people would say he's better because unlike Rogue, he's going to be best in slot for ABX. But yeah, I think overall he does some things better, some things worse. And I think this is a fair ranking for him given his value in the game and what he's going to do for your roster and how expensive he is to rank up, all that stuff, all that good stuff. Anyways, moving on to Cull Obsidian. Huge game changer for the combat class. In my opinion, just fantastic top to bottom. He's got everything that Supergiant has, basically, except he's wrapped up in a combat blanket instead of a universal blanket. He's got iframe ignore, he's got accumulation, he's got a really strong 1 to 5 with his either 4 cancel 5 combo or 4 cancel 5 cancel 3 hold combo where he just spins to win. His transcendent skill is really hot, huge damage, and he's super tanky with the auto heal that none of the other Black Order members have. So he basically just combines the damage of somebody like Moon Knight or higher with the healing of someone like Wolverine and the tankiness, which is basically unheard of, right? You have one or the other, but not both. So in my opinion, he's honestly the best combat character in the game. Now, I will say this. The past year or so, combat characters have been so mid that they've been ranked and they've been valued based on their ability to do ABX, because it's really been the only consistent place for combats, especially when you look at Apocalypse and Moon Knight. Cull Obsidian, aka Black Dwarf, doesn't do ABX that well, so I think that's why some people are going to underrate him, but he's just so good for everything else that I honestly think he deserves this ranking here above Moon Knight, and it shows when I'm trying to clear, stage 27 of Mephisto, and Cull Obsidian is by far my only combat type who can even come close. And even if I give Moon Knight an identical team, he can't do it, and they've both got identical builds. So that really seals the deal for me as far as his overall value. Again, I do hope that the devs look into his passive, because it seems like it's still not working. His, what is it called? The Black Order passive Dwarf Charge. It still doesn't seem to be working, giving them guard break immunity, but even without that buff, he's still amazing. Second, oh no, not second, last but not least, oh, second to last, yes, we have Proxima and then Ebony. Okay, so we'll do Ebony first, it's fine. Ebony is the most recent addition, and that's actually why I waited to do this tier list. I think he's really, really good. He has a very straightforward rotation where you just do 3 cancel 4 cancel 5 or 5 cancel 4 cancel 3. You just do, cancel all those skills and you can proc, or you can go ahead and use a Judgment or a Rage for him. I didn't really give you guys CTP recommendations for Cull Obsidian or Corvus, but they both work really well with an energy, and they can also work really well with a rage, so it's really whatever your cup of tea is. Ebony, on the other hand, as an elemental type, Judgment is going to be the best CTP for him, probably followed by a rage or an energy, but yeah, Judgment is sort of the end-all, be-all for him because of the elemental damage on every single one of his skills. On top of having pretty outstanding damage, he's got tons of value as a support, as a leadership for PvE, and as a support for PvP. So he really is a jack of all trades. Is he a master of any trade? Maybe not, but being a jack of all trade at this point in the game, for his value is actually worth quite a bit. So I honestly think he deserves to be True God. I actually think he's a little bit better than, well, he's actually quite a bit better than Gambit, but the thing with blast types in MFF is that once you go past Gambit, you're into like the hyper god category. So he might actually be, it might actually be time to move Human Torch down a peg. I don't know if we're ready for that conversation, but he, you know, in some ways he's better. Like as a support and as a leadership, he's obviously way better than Sharon Rogers and way better than Cable and way better than Human Torch. He basically climbs very close to Mephisto. As a DPS, he's better than some of these, not all. So it really depends on what you're using him for, but he's definitely deserving of being in this spot right here at minimum, which I think he's in very, very good company. Last but not least, we have Proxima. Now, like Ebony Maw, Proxima's had amazing leadership for PvE content, amazing leadership for dispatch. She's got an amazing passive for all kinds of content, PvP included. But in my opinion, I think that she doesn't really shine unless you can give her the max build, which is either a mighty or a brilliant CTP of energy, because she lacks guard break immunity, she lacks super armor. So when you're charging up her 4th skill, Destructive Pierce, if she gets interrupted, you lose all that damage. And we've seen this before with other characters where they're charging up a skill and then boop, and then oh, the skill's gone, damage is gone, your clear time is gone. So that's sort of where my criticism lasts and sort of knocks Proxima down. She's still good. She has really gorgeous skills. She's got a pretty straightforward rotation, you know, 5 delayed, cancel 3, cancel 4. And it's pretty easy to build up her tier 3, and she's surprisingly tanky with a heal on her 5th and her tier 3. So she's got tons of healing, but I just feel like her damage is too inconsistent, and the cost to increase her consistency to a level that's going to compete with Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian and stuff is just too costly, right? We're talking about twice as many CTPs required minimum for the same output as the other Black Order members. That tells me that her raw damage, if you take that away, is going to be much lower and much less. And that's not even factoring in the RNG of getting guard broken by those purple skills that don't even care if you have guard break immunity. So yeah, for that reason, I still think she's a true god, because it's just so rare nowadays to get a leadership and support combo in a tier 3. But she does not go beyond Vision, in my opinion. Again, some people are going to disagree with me on this one. She's definitely needed for certain content. If you're pushing very high level ABX scores, you need Proxima. So she's definitely needed for certain content, but you know, she's really, and that's why she's here, to be honest, right? As we get more and more leadership / supports that are tier 3 or transcended, they're not going to be as highly rated anymore. Like the very first, you know, a year ago, we were telling people to tier 3 Cyclops. So I want to put that into context, right? 4 years ago, we were like, yeah, go tier 3, tier 2 Coulson right now. Go, hurry. Like use all your resources for Coulson. He's so good, because we were, you know, so starved of support characters. But nowadays, we get like a Wave. Wave was one of the last support characters we got. We're just like, whatever. We don't need Wave. I mean, she's not an amazing support character to begin with, but you can sort of get what I'm saying. So right now, we're still in that sort of starving phase of not having that many options when it comes to really good leaderships and really good supports for World Boss Legend and DRX and that kind of end game content. And that's why I think Proxima is a little bit higher than she normally would be if the playing field was more even as far as supports and leaderships go. So those are all of the characters that have been moved, or those are all the new characters that have been introduced since the update and how they've been moved around. Now we're gonna go ahead, I'm just gonna take a quick water break, and I'm gonna move around the characters that I had bolded before I introduced the Black Order. Okay, so starting us off with Scarlet Witch. She was actually the first character that I noticed when I was taking a look at my tier list. I was like, man, Scarlet Witch is way too low. She's proven herself to not only be able to take down Null and Mephisto at a pretty high level, but the biggie for her is, on top of that, she's able to do other content, dispatch, and ABX. She's actually overtaken Ghost Rider on top of overtake. Like, she crushed Captain Marvel in the first week, but now she can take down Ghost Rider as well. So that really does bump up her value more. She's obviously a very expensive tier 3, but and a very, you know, roughshod rotation, but it works, and the raw damage is definitely there. You're gonna want to give her a CTP of Judgment or Rage. Honestly, I kind of flip-flop between the two. I'm not really sure which one is best. It might really depend on the game mode, but she definitely deserves to be in the True God category, in my opinion. She's also still a really good leadership for endgame content with a 45% damage to all, or 45% Is it all attack or energy attack? I actually can't remember. But anyways, you know, she sort of claps, right? Energy attack, yeah. Okay, so she's just solid all around. Really, the only thing she's missing is a support buff. But somehow she has a striker buff. Yeah, and she even got her mind control enhanced. We actually didn't talk about this, but her mind control on her 4th skill was bumped up from 2 seconds to 4 seconds. So she actually even got better for mid-game content like World Boss Ultimate and stuff like that. So I actually think that Scarlet Witch needs to be, where was she supposed to be here? She's supposed to be just under, I have this like weird ranking system for these characters. She's supposed to be just under Sentry, in my opinion. And I'll leave this spot open because there's actually someone that's going to take her place there, and that's actually Thor. Thor is moving down kind of because the Universal class is just too stacked. And I know that seems like a cop-out in terms of the explanation. Thor hasn't gotten worse. It's just we've gotten so many as good or better Universals. Scarlet Witch, Vision, Proxima, Supergiant. In the last 2 updates, we got 4 insanely good Universal types. And so it really just allows you to reassess the value of characters. And especially when you compare Vision and Thor, you can see that especially with a lower end build, Vision just crushes Thor. And then when you give them identical builds, Vision is still going to outpace Thor. And he's going to have a slightly easier rotation. He's a little bit more proc friendly. He has a bit more tankiness, right? So you start to see how the character is just not keeping up. It's not that he's slowing down. He's just not keeping up with the pace of the pack if we're running a marathon. So yeah, nothing against Thor, just that the Universal class is just way too stacked. And that's just the way it is. He's still obviously amazing. He's top of God Light, which is not a bad place to be at all. But yeah, that's just kind of how it goes. Another Universal that's actually moving down, in my opinion, is Odin. And this has, you know, something to do with the Universal class being stacked, and it also just has to do with the fact that Odin just doesn't have to do as many things in the game anymore, or he can't do as many things in the game anymore at the same pace that he was. So he's actually moving down between Ghost Rider and Proxima. I really think Odin and Proxima are similar in the value that they bring. Odin is just basically a DPS unit at this point. He doesn't have, he has leadership, but no one's going to use that for PvP. But he's a very good DPS unit, but he's not really bringing anything else to the table. And again, he's not really going to compete at a higher level with guys like Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider has more value for ABX, for squad battle, etc. So yeah, that's sort of what happens to Odin. He's sort of just slowing down at this point. Again, not getting worse, just not as good as these other crazy Universals. Then we have Silver Surfer, sort of the same thing here. He's just not needed for as much content anymore. He's still good for PvP, and when Sentry's banned, he is the most used character, but besides that, it's Dispatch. Honestly, it's Dispatch and PvP, and the thing is, those 2 game modes are completely opposite. So for Dispatch, you're going to want to give him a Rage. For PvP, obviously, you want to give him a Regen. So he sort of just sits in this sort of mid-zone because he's just not going to do as much for you overall, and he's definitely not going to be able to do it as fast. Like he's got very little value to no value in World Boss Legend, which I haven't really been penalizing him for until now, but it's sort of time for him to take a backseat to some of these actual giants of World Boss Legend content. And then, yeah, that's basically how it goes. I was actually going to move Ghost Rider up above Scarlet Witch. They can sort of flip-flop there, you know, depending on which one you need more, depending on whether you need more ABX or more squad battle or what you want to do there. But they're both very, very good. Scarlet Witch, a little bit more, well, she's obviously more expensive. I do think she has a bit more of a strange rotation, as hard as Ghost Rider's is, but she is tankier because of the healing, whereas Ghost Rider and the movement skill, whereas Ghost Rider is a little bit harder to play if you're not good at dodging manually. So it's tricky, but I think they're very close in value to one another in terms of what they're going to bring, not in terms of their cost. And then the last 2 we have here are Doctor Strange and Maker, Mr. Fantastic. So like Thor, the Blast class is just a little bit too stacked for Doctor Strange. At this point, he's just a leadership, and that's not going to be enough for endgame content to really have him tussle with the big boys at the top. So I do think that moving him to the top of Godlight with Professor X, there's no insult to him. Professor X is an amazing character, but I think this more accurately represents what Doctor Strange is going to bring to your roster, right? He's good. He can definitely carry you through a lot of mid-game to late-game content, but for that really late-game content, he's not going to hold up, right? His skills just have no mobility. His tier 3 has no mobility. If bosses move out of the zones, he just loses all his damage. He's easy to guard break. So he has a few sort of legacy traits about his kit that make him more difficult to keep up with, that make it more difficult for him to keep up with the changing content. And then Mr. Fantastic Maker. I was sort of hoping that I could keep him here in True Gods and that he would earn his place, but he really hasn't. There's like no content that he's best for. He's just a leadership, and much less specific than Doctor Strange. He's really just a leadership for Human Torch for the endgame stuff. He can do a little bit of ABX stuff. He can do a little bit of cute stuff with the CTP of energy, but I really don't think it's enough to justify his value there. So I honestly think at this point he's about as good as Venom. Venom's a really good striker. Venom's best for at least 1 month of ABX for combat hero. That's saying a lot, right? Maker's not doing any of that. Maker's a leadership for Human Torch. So yeah, we might even move Valkyrie over here because she's really, really good. But anyways, these are my thoughts and these are my rankings of the current meta and the tier list of Marvel Future Fight, mostly focused, as you saw, on the first 2 columns. Hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.